Welcome to Spicer and Company. I'm Sean Spicer.
And I'm Lindsay Keith. Well, Sean, it's hard to believe this, but it's day 70 of the Portland protest, and the clash between police and protesters just continues.
Yeah, you're right. The liberal media is saying that these protests have been calmer after federal agents last week left. But just this morning, police were forced to declare a riot after protesters set fire and barricaded public roadways. I know these are all peaceful, don't worry. But according to the Oregon Live, in July, Portland police recorded the highest number of death investigations in a single month. That's the most in more than 3 decades. To discuss this, I want to bring in the Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security, Ken Cuccinelli. Mr. Secretary, thanks for being here.
Good to be with you, Sean.
So I would want to start this off by playing some sound from a Senate hearing yesterday, an exchange between Texas Senator Ted Cruz and Hawaii Senator Hiro. Take a listen.
You're welcome to say something negative about Antifa right now.
I think that I've covered the subject quite well. You are not listening.
Okay, she declined to speak, so that is the position of the Democratic Party.
Mr. Secretary, what does it say when one party isn't standing up for law and order and isn't standing up for our federal agents and destruction of our federal buildings?
Yeah, we do have a problem with a lot on the left who just refuse to condemn the violent criminals who, Portland being the poster child for this, but it's not the only place in the country that this problem is arising. And the existence and the enforcement of the rule of law are absolutely basic to the proper functioning of our democracy and the most basic civil right we all have, and that's to be safe in our homes and in our lives.
You know, it's interesting. You've been an attorney general of a state. You've had to enforce laws. It seems to me that we've lost something in this country when you can go out and deface a federal building, and then the federal officers that are come in from DHS to protect those buildings, which are funded by taxpayers, are considered the bad guys.
Well, not only that, the law very clearly charges us with that mission. And the Federal Protective Service, a part of the Department of Homeland Security most people hadn't heard of until 2 months ago, has been doing that since 1971 at over 9,000 federal facilities. And they have never, Sean, never in their history experienced anything like Portland. And that is to Portland's shame.
Yeah, you know, Mr. Secretary, I've always admired law and officers. When I was a kid, we looked up to police officers. We looked up to people. How do these people who have, dedicated their lives to public service, to protecting us, feel these days? When you talk to them, how is their morale?
So they understand the swirl of politics, but I will say that it's reached a point they really shake their head at people in the federal government, because while they're not in the executive branch, these law enforcement officers are those senators' law enforcement officers as well, not just for, I think of them as my officers as a deputy secretary here, but they have some responsibility for these folks, and to just nakedly lie about the professional work they're doing day in and day out, putting themselves on the line to keep all of our federal facilities, including the people in them, most importantly, safe, is unprecedented. It's extraordinary. And I think they think that these violent left-wing criminals are part of their political base, and they shouldn't be part of anybody's political base.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, they're here to serve and protect us all. I don't think an officer of the law has ever been concerned what party somebody's been with when they're stepping in the middle of harm's way to protect them. And that's how it should be. Let me switch gears for a second. In 2016, my colleagues and I from the RNC were asked to come up to your building. You weren't there then. It was the Obama administration, to get a briefing on what DHS was doing to make sure that the integrity of our voting systems were secure, and the efforts that were being taken by DHS to help protect the vote. What are you doing this cycle to maintain that?
Wow, the difference is extraordinary, Sean. I don't think you'd recognize it. The level of partnership that we have achieved with every state in terms of election protection, and I'm talking about the infrastructure here, the voting rolls, election day voting, all of those things, is at a level never before seen. We've also been urging states, because they're in charge of elections, to move in the direction of verifiable paper ballots. And, that has gone from around 80% to up over 90%. So if we have to go do recounts in a state, and I had a race that had a recount one time, and we literally, we counted the paper ballots at that time, but at that time, Virginia also had these electronic voting machines that just tabulated. So what it really ended up being on those was a retabulation. You don't actually see every vote cast. And we're moving away from that to a much more verifiable system. And so far, while we watch our main opponents here, China, Russia, Iran, who want to try to influence the election, they aren't doing it in any ways with respect to the machinery of the election at this point. It's all out in the public opinion sphere, where they try to, frankly, inflame passions on both sides. And then the Chinese actually would like to see people get in who they can work with.
Yeah. I cast my primary ballot this year in Virginia, absentee. I'm a big believer in absentee ballot voting because there's a verifiable process of it. The president has expressed concern over all mail-in ballots, where every voter on the rolls in any particular state gets sent a ballot. Are you concerned about all mail-in ballot as well?
So the key, as you noted, Sean, is to have that verification process in place that's proven and reliable. And when you do it in excuse, meaning when you have a reason for cause absentee voting, like we have in Virginia, the scale of it as a proportion of the total votes is very manageable. It's much more verifiable. It doesn't mean it's perfect by any means. I can tell you, as someone who is, as an AG, involved in the enforcement of those laws, they're very tough to enforce. When you do all voting that way, you scale up the potential for problems. Obviously, you can still keep that paper verified ballot, but the verification process for registration, who gets that ballot, who's filling it out, starts to get much more difficult as a matter of scale.
Mr. Secretary, thank you for coming on and sharing your views with us, giving us an update. And thank you and your officers for all you're doing to protect us and keep us safe in this country.
Amen. Thank you.
All right, appreciate it. All right, still to come, social media censorship in the 2020 election. Congressman Devin Nunes is going to be here to talk about just that. Plus, we're going to share the big takeaways from all those primaries around the country last night. And Phil Robertson from Duck Dynasty, he's going to be here to talk about his new project. All that and more